Hello and welcome to 1 Week, 1 Year, live from...
Well, not live.
Don't do this to me.
On location.
Okay.
In Topeka, Kansas.
1 Week, 1 Year, on location in Topeka, Kansas, reporting to you from the Kansas Silent Film Festival. It's our 1923 episode, and we went on the road to a film festival that happened to be playing a bunch of 1923 movies.
Too perfect not to do.
Right at the right time. So we've got some tickets, and we're recording our first in-person episode.
Indeed. Weird that this is our first in-person episode.
Considering that we were, for a lot of the first ones, we were not too far away from each other.
Like 40 minutes away.
Yeah. No, not even. Like 20. Okay. Yeah. I'm Chris Ellie. I'm one of your hosts. And joining me in person is...
I'm Glenn Covell, the other host. I'm a filmmaker. You are?
A film projectionist. We just got from the airport. We went straight to the Silent Film Festival. And
I decided to dress up in 1920s clothing because why not?
Yeah, I was just distracted by my dinging iPad, but we won't have to think about that. It's a loose episode in a way, but we're going to be watching tons of stuff from 1923. And we started off... We don't have news. We don't have news.
We'll put the news in later.
The news of the year, 1923. At least 8 are killed when the town of Rosewood, Florida is attacked and burned to the ground by racist mobs. In the Bronx, Yankee Stadium hosts its first game. Mount Etna erupts in Italy. Real estate developers put up an enormous sign advertising land for sale in Hollywood Land. Mexican revolutionary Pancho Villa is killed in a fiery ambush in Chihuahua. The newly established Irish Free State joins the League of Nations. Amid continuing unrest in Germany, Adolf Hitler leads a violent coup attempt against the Weimar Republic, which ends in his arrest for high treason. Inventor Garrett Morgan patents a new type of 3-position traffic light.
There was somebody who started talking at the beginning of this festival about the news that was happening in 1923.
Yeah.
And we were like, lady, you're stealing our bit.
This is our thing. No one else talks about the news or what happened in a year.
So Glenn, what's up? What's going on?
I'm here in person.
Here.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That's been a while.
Yeah.
It's very weird that this is the first time we've actually recorded the show, like, in the same space.
And, like, I always thought, like, oh, maybe our mics will crossbleed or whatever, and that'll be a problem. But also, like, it's easier to record on Zoom, but I don't know. Yeah. Also, it's probably easier to have a conversation in person.
Yeah, for sure.
Can interrupt each other a little better,
yeah.
You know? So the festival started off with the movie The Covered Wagon by James Cruise.
Not a film I was super familiar with.
I wasn't either. I was familiar with it because it goes on sale a lot on the Kino website.
Yeah.
And so I got it from the Kino website and have not watched it until now.
But the second highest grossing film in America of 1923.
Yeah.
So significant.
Yeah. And you can definitely see its influence in a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It feels very... not that I've seen any 1950s John Ford Westerns,
right? But
it feels like a 1950s John Ford Western.
It has a lot of quintessential Western elements to it. To me, it felt a bit like The Oregon Trail, the movie.
Yeah.
Which I guess is kind of backwards because I feel like, if anything, the game The Oregon Trail is taking from this movie.
Yeah, I never played that game.
I kind of did. It was mostly I watched my brothers play it, and they would just try to kill everyone as quickly as possible.
Right.
Which is, I think, how most people play that game.
As you do.
But, like, the fording the river stuff and, like, having to hunt and gather.
If there's a river, you gotta ford it.
You gotta. So it reminded me of that. It did remind me a bit of some of the, like, earlier, shorter, I think D.W. Griffith Westerns that we watched with, like, the love triangle plot and kind of the westward expansion backdrop. I mean, that's in a lot of Westerns, but...
It definitely, you have to turn off your brain a little bit. There were points where I was having to go, during this movie, I need to not think about like the inherent horrors of Manifest Destiny.
Well,
and, like,
it's
you know,
it's
all
weird
this
because
stuff.
this movie kind of touches on those, but then like doesn't. Then it immediately glosses them over.
It touches on it, but yeah, right. But then it doesn't actually engage with it in any way.
Right, and I even during the movie I was like, does this film as like a story even consider those things like evils? I guess
I don't think so.
not really, because it never really paints. I feel like the settlers as destructive, other than right. We see the Native Americans be like, "Hey, these people are coming through and they're destroying everything. If we don't kill them, we will all die." But then,
It's just lip service.
yeah. But it's still, on one hand, I was like, "Oh, this movie's like gonna like starting to like get into it. It's gonna start like reckoning with this stuff," and I'm like, "No, not really at all." The rest of the movie plays it pretty like black and white. Just like, no, settlers are all good. They're just trying to make a life. Nothing wrong here.
There was nothing there before.
Yeah, of course. They're exploring, settling this huge unsettled land that no one has lived in.
I just recently, this is like, I mean, of course this is like, the correct frame to look at history, but I've been like, I just went to a history museum a couple days ago that had like this really like horrifying exhibit on the Sand Creek massacre. Oof. where the governor of Colorado was basically like, after breaking treaty after treaty and telling all of these indigenous people like, oh, like, here, stay in this little patch of unfarmable land. Mm-hmm. And then like right after that he goes like, hey everybody, go kill them. And then they killed over 200 people. They just like slaughtered them. Jesus. So like this is like immediate in my mind watching this movie. But I guess we should generally talk about what the movie is. It's basically like an Oregon Trail type thing. Yeah, people
trying to get to, I guess, the West Coast.
Yes, and
to make a life for themselves.
And the whole movie is basically like on the road. Mm-hmm. And there's kind of like two like factions in this wagon train. Yeah. One of them is the good guy faction and one's the bad guy faction.
Pretty much, yeah.
I feel like a lot of the plot points of the movie, a lot of the things that happen just are like, it's like loose. It's not super plotty in a way because it's just like a bunch of stuff happening on the character.
It is kind of vignette-y in that, like, it's like, or episodic maybe is a better word for it.
Yeah, they've got the fording the river scene. They've got the negotiating with the Indians scene. Yeah, they've got the battle scene.
Yeah, circling the wagons. Yeah, scene. There's I will say a lot of the imagery of the actual like wagon train, because it is just like vast open landscape with this massive wagon train going like to the horizon. I don't know, it's cool. It's cool just to see something that big and like just the fact that they staged this massive thing.
It's a really big scale movie. Yeah. Like large scale scenes. Honestly, like the fording the river scene, it's meant to be this like really big set piece, and I was like, okay, it's a bunch of horses and water, whatever. But like, it does seem like it was like a really like expensive and like big thing to shoot for sure.
But I feel like all the characters are kind of stock characters at this point. Yeah. Even this early in like film history, it's like, oh yeah, these are all already very well established like archetypes. Right. But it's fun.
Yeah. I enjoyed it a lot, and there were like a lot of moments in it, especially like moments of comedy that, like I halfway through the movie I was like, this movie's all right, and then like in the back half of the movie there are some like really like just fun scenes.
Well, I think in the back half of the movie they introduced the best character in the movie, which is Jim Bridger,
who is this guy who like might be a polygamist Mormon or something.
There's a couple of weird references to Mormonism, but not in like kind of a joking light, I think. Like, I feel like,
Yeah.
well, we'll get to the next part. But yeah, Jim Bridger was a real guy, I think, right?
Oh, I don't know. I have no idea.
But he's definitely kind of a comic relief character in this, who is constantly drinking liquor, spelled Licker, in the
Liquor.
intertitles.
I hardly even know her.
Yeah. To the point where like he can't remember stuff until he gets himself drunk again.
Which becomes like a major plot point, which
Yeah.
is so funny. So like they do, like him and his friend, they have this like William Tell kind of thing where they're like, we trust each other and we know each other as friends. So even though we're drunk off our asses,
Yeah.
we're gonna shoot holes in tin cans rested on each other's heads.
Probably my favorite scene in the movie.
It's so good.
Because it's also like kind of a like formally adventurous scene too. Like there's like the POV stuff of him aiming down his gun.
It's got like a Doom. It did it before Doom.
Yeah, and it did
2005.
aiming down the sights before Call of Duty did.
No, I mean the Rock Doom that has the first.
Oh
person
no, yeah,
segment.
I got that. And then like yeah, it's like he's drunk, so it's like it's blurry at first, and then he like wipes his eyes and it's clear. I don't know. It's just a funny scene of
Yeah,
really drunk dudes trying to shoot.
cowboy dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There, if you were to cast this movie now, Sam Elliott would be somewhere in there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's Jim Bridger and who's the other guy? Joe Jackson,
I'm
right?
not good with names, but yeah.
Is the other character. And
Shoeless Joe Jackson.
those are the two kind of like more like rough and tumble, like I don't know, tracker guys.
Yeah.
Who
But
are,
they respect the main character because he's a good cowboy, even though he's a clean-shaven pretty boy from
Yeah.
the north
yeah.
or from the east or wherever.
But all the scenes between those two are my favorite parts. Like those two characters, I thought really kind of
Oh yeah.
bumped the movie up a lot in my eyes.
Yes. Literally, I was like, let me give it another half star. Let me give it another
Yeah.
one on top of that. Like because we were watching this live, and oh, by the way, if you're listening, we're recording this in our car in between sets of movies, and we're about to go watch Safety Last, which is next, and it's the next time you'll hear from us, along with a couple other Harold Lloyd shorts.
Mm-hmm.
But we weren't able to take notes, so
Right. So it's kind of I don't have anything to fall back on. I'm just sort of like, what else happened?
it's impressions, you know.
Yeah.
We're doing it.
I'm not doing any impressions today.
Not your Lawrence Kasdan impression.
No.
Well, okay. I mean, that's all we got. After
Yeah. Covered Wagon.
Covered Wagon.
But then after Covered Wagon, we got to see two comedic short films, which are direct parodies of Covered Wagon.
Yeah. And I liked these. I thought they were a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The first one was called The Uncovered Wagon.
Yeah.
And then the second one was called, well, we could talk about The Uncovered Wagon. Well,
Sure.
Should we talk about them as a group? They're kind of similar.
Yeah. They're basically the same movie twice.
Yeah. So, or three times.
Right.
There's The Uncovered Wagon and then Two Wagons, both covered.
Yeah. And they're both produced by Hal Roach, who was a big like short comedy guy in the 1910s and 20s. They're both really leaning into the idea of parody. Like more so than I think any other thing that we've watched for this show.
Yeah. I mean, I was just saying to you that like they are like the Meet the Spartans of their day.
Exactly.
It feels like a very Zucker Brothers, like especially the first one, Uncovered Wagon, felt like a very Zucker Brothers style of comedy.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a part, there's a part where it's like, they're going out west in their covered wagons, and then the wagons are just like cars with like covered wagon
with like
things
bed
on
sheets
top of
on them.
Yeah. Like people are riding bicycles and stuff.
Oh, one interesting thing about actually all three of these wagon films is that it's not the first time I think it's ever been used, but it's the first time I can remember seeing it in any of these movies that we've watched, which is having a like scrolling backdrop behind someone.
Yeah.
Like they're supposed to be like, riding a horse, or in the case of the parody movie, riding a bicycle.
Yeah.
And instead of actually filming someone doing that, they have them stationary with like a backdrop going behind them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's like rear projection or if it's actually like they're like cranking a backdrop that like
Right.
moves behind them.
It's the shots are really quick, so it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah.
Which is probably good because like you don't see the artifice of it as
Right.
easily.
Yeah. But that's not something that's like a very like classic movie effect
Mm-hmm.
that I don't remember having seen up until this point.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure when that started.
I wonder if like Méliès almost like did something like that. That sounds kind of
He
familiar.
did have. That's true. He did have backdrops that moved and
Yeah.
scrolled. So, I guess he was probably the first one to actually do it.
Papa Georges.
Yeah.
Another thing that's in all three movies is that there's like a little like a boy character who in the original, it's not a joke, I guess. Maybe it's a joke that like he's just like chewing tobacco the entire time.
It's treated in kind of a lighthearted manner.
Yeah.
In the original, the Covered Wagon.
But yeah, it's this like 10-year-old boy who's like chewing tobacco and just kind of like the peanut gallery on all of the love triangle drama that's happening.
As 10-year-old boys did in Western times.
And in these other shorts, I think it was Uncovered Wagon, where it was two wagons both covered, where the character playing the boy in the original, he plays a banjo from time to time. He plays "Oh Susanna," which the accompaniment Ben Modell played on the piano while he was doing it. In Two Wagons Both Covered, he has a saxophone, which is just it's great.
Classic Old West instrument. And there's kind of a weird dig at like saxophone players in the movie, which I was like, hey, come on now.
There's a lot of like, I mean, in the style of these like newer, 15 years ago parody movies that were happening, like it's got a lot of these like winking references to current day, like the moment. It's like, whew, that stuff's going on in New York. Like, better park the wagon outside of LA so it's safe, you know?
Which I mean, like some of them are like so old timey and like of the moment that you're just like, oh boy, like this is a 20s movie for sure. Some of them I thought were genuinely really funny.
Yeah.
And a lot of them I was either just confused by or just like, this is dumb and bad.
But these movies both were really funny.
Yeah.
I like them a lot.
I mean, they're both like they're like 4 gags every second.
Yeah.
They're so fast paced.
Which is crazy. Honestly, like, we've been focusing a lot on this kind of like these classic the slapstick comedy guys.
Like Keaton, Chaplin,
Lloyd.
Yeah.
And like this is like a bit more broad of a comedy. It's a bit less focused in on one aspect. It's just like, here's some jokes and gags and goofs.
Yeah.
And it feels, honestly, like I thought that the Covered Wagon and these parody movies, a lot of the movies that we've seen up until now, we've been kind of like tracking the development of the style, and I think that it's pretty common, like editing wise, pacing wise, for them to feel old. And I think that like for the stuff we've seen from 1923 so far, it almost feels like a step forward in like a subtle step forward in like, this feels more like a movie that is put together in like a more modern way. Yeah. I know we keep saying that, but it's like these more incremental
Yeah, because every year everything feels a little bit more modern.
Yeah.
It's true. But it's cool to be able to notice that. To be like, and it's for not to just be like, oh, this stuff again, and for stuff to feel fresh and new, and like every year there's something that's like, oh, we haven't really seen this. A lot.
In all three of these, I think like the editing had energy, the just like writing and especially in the comedy shorts, like the writing had this energy that we don't see in a lot of
that was stuff. The thing that stuck out the most. Like their sense of humor, the two parody movies, is so unlike any of the any of the Keystone movies or any of the slapstick stuff that we've watched up till now. And that felt, again, very more modern. More like a Zucker Brothers thing, or like Mel Brooks, than anything else that we've watched.
Mel Brooks is another good reference point for that. Yeah, for sure. I mean, another movie that was. Oh, and the other thing about these shorts is that they were played on 16 millimeter, which was really cool.
Yeah.
The first movie was played off of a Blu-ray on a digital projector, but there was a projectionist in the back with a 16 millimeter. As soon as I realized that it was going off, I was like, oh my god, why am I sitting in the front? Like, I gotta be next to the projector.
And yeah, they all had live score, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the first time I've seen a silent movie with a live score, but it's the first time I've watched something for the show in that manner. So that was very fun and cool.
We're having fun.
Yeah.
And then we thought that was the end of the first segment.
Yeah, we got a bonus short. Got a bonus comedy short.
Which I forgot the name already.
Gift something. It's a gift.
It's a gift.
Starring.
It's a gift. Starring Snub Pollard.
Indeed.
And
I don't think I'd seen any of his work up until
and I hadn't heard of him.
Yeah, I had like vaguely heard of him. I think just in that he was also in the mix of like silent comedy people.
He's got he's in the Hal Roach group of
he has
actors.
He has a comedy mustache, but a very different one from Charlie Chaplin.
Big, not small.
Yeah. He went the opposite direction.
And this movie is like about him as like this kind of zany inventor.
Yeah.
And there's like this stuff about oil magnates.
Yeah. A lot of oil magnate jokes, which feels very topical for the time.
Yeah. Clowning on Rockefeller.
Yeah. So the Snub Pollard character is introduced like waking up in bed, and he has all these inventions that are like doing his morning routine for him, kind of like he has all these strings above his bed, and he pulls each one, and like one starts a little flame, and then another one he pulls and like it drops a kettle onto it. It pulls another one and like a chicken lays an egg in like a Rube Goldberg chute that goes down and it cracks into a bowl.
Literally the beginning of Flubber, the beginning of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and
to the point where I'm pretty sure there's literally some of the same exact
like contraptions
as the beginning of Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah.
Where it's one of those things where like I saw that movie not that long ago, but it's like I was familiar with that movie already. I was like, it's a classic.
Yeah.
Sort of.
I love Pee-wee.
And then watching this, which is a movie I hadn't heard of, I'm like, wait a minute, this is just that scene in 1923.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Snub did it first.
Yeah.
But in terms of history, he got snubbed.
Yet another example of just a thing showing up way earlier than we typically think of it being.
Zany inventor making breakfast was already a thing.
Which is a big thing I was seeing in like 80s comedies, because there's like Pee-wee, there's Honey, I Shrunk the Kids does it. There's at least one or two others that are escaping my memory of. Yeah, like some I guess Back to the Future kind of does it.
Yeah.
Of like Rube Goldberg machines and an inventor inventing things that don't really work always. So after he does all this, that pulls the string that pulls his pants up, and like there's also all of his clothes are like built into his apartment, his like bedroom kind of. Like his tie is like part of the
Wallace
window.
and Gromit also did this too.
True. Very, very, very true. And like his hat is in the vase of flowers. Just like weird, silly things like that.
And like much of the movie, even though like it's got these kind of like weirdly arbitrary like premises, much of the movie is focused on his car, which is
a great thing.
like there's a big cylinder outside of his house.
Yeah, this is garbage.
It says garage.
Well, it says garbage first.
Right, it says garbage.
And then he pulls the thing down so it covers the B, so it says garage.
And then out pops his little like rocket bullet car.
Yeah.
It's just big enough. It's like a motorcycle sidecar that he can sit in. It's got no engine. And this inventor, this zany inventor, the way that he gets around is he has this big cartoon magnet.
Yeah.
and then hitches on to the magnetism of passing cars.
Yeah. And there's a lot of gags of him like changing direction by like pointing the magnet at a different car going the opposite direction, and like pulling stuff off of the street as he goes by. Great magnet gags. Very Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Very like Roger Rabbit. I mean, Roger Rabbit literally has a giant giant horseshoe magnet.
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Wiley.
But yeah, it's like classic goofy cartoon jokes,
Yeah.
but
It was-
in live action.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I just remember one other gag from the Covered Wagon parodies, which is in two wagons, both covered. At the end, there is a raid of the Escrow Indians.
Yeah, probably maybe my favorite joke in that.
And you're like, okay, like they're just making reference to like the term escrow, and then it turns out they're like business guys in suits who are trying to like flip properties.
Yeah, they're all like real estate salesmen who come out and they're all wearing like 1920s suits and hats, and they're like, we got this new property in California that's really really hopping. And yeah, it was just such an unexpected, very 1920s joke that but it didn't feel, the humor of it didn't feel dated. It was just sort of like very topical.
And thankfully
to the
not
time.
necessarily, not like too offensive, It was
Yeah,
like,
especially during the comedy ones, I was like, oh boy.
yeah,
Because there are some jokes in there that have not aged well.
sure, yeah. But yeah, that one was really funny. And also felt like this Mel Brooks, like Blazing Saddles kind of thing of like completely modern people stepping into a Western.
Right, yeah.
Do you have anything else to say about these films?
I don't think so. I think we covered most of it.
Well, there was our snap responses to this first set of films. We're about to watch Safety Last for the first. Have you seen it before?
No.
For the first time.
I'm very excited.
I am too. Catch you later, YouTube. Watch on YouTube. You can see us in our car. It's so cinematic and exciting.
So we're back in a hotel room.
Section 2 of this episode.
Section 2?
Part 2.
Part 2. Let's call it Part 2.
What's wrong with section?
I don't know, it's weird. Anyway, we watched some Harold Lloyd pictures, a couple of shorts.
We had an all Harold Lloyd evening.
Yeah.
According to the program.
A sort of brief Harold Lloyd retrospective of 3 shorts, sort of charting his development of his sort of screen persona across the 3 different shorts, and then culminating in his most famous film.
Yes, Safety Last.
Yeah.
The 3 shorts were Miss Fatty's Seaside Lovers from 1915, which is a Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle picture, but Harold Lloyd's basically an extra in it.
Supporting role, maybe.
A supporting role.
He plays one of the, what are they
Best
called?
supporting actor. He's one of the Seaside Lovers.
Yes, but they're referred to as...
How to be a Seaside Lover.
They're referred to in the film as, not toughs. There's some word that they call them. Not chaps. I'm forgetting. We're very tired, if you couldn't tell.
And we're each 2 drinks in at the hotel bar.
That too. Anyway, there was a funny word that they call those 3 Seaside Lover characters. That feels very 20s. We'll edit that in later.
Sure. The second one was Luke's Movie Muddle, and then the third one from 1916, and the third one was Get Out and Get Under from 1920, leading up to Safety Last 1923.
And you can really see, well, yeah, because like Harold Lloyd is barely in Seaside Lovers. He's just one of 3 kind of generic.
One of 3 guys who is going after Fatty Arbuckle in drag.
Yeah.
For her money.
Yeah. And they all have very old-timey 1920s bathing suits.
Yes. Just like in one of those parodies of Covered Wagon, they put on an old-timey bathing suit.
Yeah.
The pre-Tarzan bathing suit where men could not show their nipples.
Yeah. And so they just wear a big stripy onesie.
Yes. Kind of a vibe. I want one of those bathing suits, actually.
I mean, especially in the past year, Benoit Blanc's bringing that look back. So
that is true. That is true.
The stripy beachwear is coming back in style.
The first one, Miss Fatty's Seaside Lovers, I felt was it really shows you the development in comedy style that has happened in the 8 years since it came out.
Yeah.
Because Miss Fatty's Seaside Lovers. What a title!
What a title indeed.
Is literally just people falling down over and over again.
Pretty much. Often in water, which makes it a little bit funnier.
Yeah, there's some underwater shots.
That actually stuck out to me. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I felt like this movie was like so simplistic. It was literally just people knocking each other over over and over again.
Yeah. A lot of big comedy kicks and slaps and.
But it's not inventive, you know. The comedy that the big three are doing, they are taking these slapstick physical comedy bits and doing something inventive with them.
Yeah.
Where this stuff, right after the movie, I compared it to Tilly's Punctured Romance with you, and like it is this 1913 to 1917. I'm just kind of making those numbers up, like style of
mid 1910s. Style.
Yeah, of really simplistic physical comedy where they haven't like gotten their chops to like spin an entire house around on a turntable.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of.
They're a lot less elaborate and they're less thoughtful.
Yeah.
And they're more they go for the easy joke more often than not.
But it's so easy that it's not even that funny.
Right. Yeah.
And I think even as far as 1916, 1 year later, with Luke's movie Muddle,
which is fairly similar. This at least is like
it's got a bit more going on.
It's a bit more going on. It's more of a Harold Lloyd vehicle. It's his earlier sort of comedy persona of Lonesome Luke.
Yes, who is looking like Chaplin, but
very,
I guess
very
less,
Chaplin-y kind of character stuff.
Like Chaplin short.
His dress is similar. He has like a different mustache, but a mustache.
And like similarly coiffed hair as well.
Yeah, true.
It's it's kind of a knockoff. And in the introduction, they were talking about how Harold Lloyd was never really satisfied with the Lonesome Luke character because it's not creative. It's not a knockoff,
and it's not him.
It's
not something. It's not coming from his own. Je ne sais quoi. I don't know. His I don't know, his instincts, I guess, maybe are a little bit less utilized in that character.
Yeah. I mean, I think this short is fun because, like a lot of shorts at this time, kind of like in the vein of The Cook, Fatty Arbuckle, The Cook. It's just like, here's a profession.
Yeah.
Let's get some jokes out of it.
Guy works at a movie theater. What are a bunch of zany things that can happen there?
Yeah.
There's some good, like, the things that I like the most in this one were like the kind of hyper specific 1910s movie theater jokes of also just like seeing the set of like a movie theater that's just like a bunch of folding chairs. Yeah. And the hand cranked projector that is hot enough to cook an egg.
If you all hop on our Instagram, I mean, this will be coming out after the story is over. Maybe we'll make a highlight on Instagram.
There you go,
but you'll see a bit of me operating a circa mid-1910s hand crank projector.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind. It was so cool.
Very similar to the one in the film that we watched.
Yes.
And very similar to the one in Pearl also.
Yes.
It might be the same model as that one. Like it's the like the boxes for the reels, the sort of exposed circular shutter, all that kind of stuff is very similar.
I when the projectionist was getting all tangled up in the film, I felt that. I haven't done that exactly, but sometimes you feel that way. Sometimes the film is just all over the place.
I mean, that's one of the joys of film, right? Is to express how something feels, not necessarily how it actually is.
You're the filmmaker. I'm just the uncreative purveyor of the art.
I don't know. There's not much else to say about that one. It's again, it's pretty straightforward. It's like a bunch of jokes in a movie theater.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, some fun bits.
There's some hat jokes.
There's some hat jokes. There's a little bit of like a parrot sketch kind of. Like he's running from one role to the next in the movie theater, which is fun. But Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, and then the third one is much more sort of like, all right, this is Harold Lloyd fully formed
Yes.
as his glasses persona,
Yeah, Get Out and Get Under.
which we hadn't seen. This one's from 1920,
Yep.
which we did not watch for that episode, but this movie rules.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Get Out and Get Under is so good. It is, again, I think, a fairly, not necessarily rote, but like, it's an established sort of plot setup, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, he's just trying to get the girl, kind of, even credited as the girl.
That's the case in like so many of these Harold Lloyd pictures. Is that
he's usually credited as
the boy.
Yeah.
And then there's the girl.
Yeah.
The girl.
Usually played by
Mildred Davis.
Mildred Davis, who he did actually marry in 1923.
Yes.
After Safety Last.
After filming Safety Last with her, and then, according to the person doing the intro, as is the custom,
Yes.
women stop working once they're married.
I also read that after they got married, Mildred Davis just stopped acting because it's like, well, she's a wife now. And it's like, well, that sucks. 1920s. But, you know.
That's why everyone,
1920s,
including
1920s.
Georges Méliès, was mad at the suffragettes.
There you go.
Because
They wanted jobs.
they wanted jobs.
But yeah, Get Out and Get Under, very fun. A lot of car gags. And some really, really good, funny car gags.
It's making me feel like one of Harold Lloyd's like signature bits is like a car or a train or some vehicle getting away from him, and then him running really, really fast, just booking it to get back on that car or train.
Yeah. But like there's the bit with like the guy walks out and he's got his garden and he's like so proud of his garden, and immediately you're like, something terrible is going to happen to this garden. And then of course Harold Lloyd backs his car out of the back of his garage through the wall into the garden, ruining it.
And he's like, oops, sorry.
Yeah. And then he's like, he gets all freaked out and then he's like, oh, it's fine, my car isn't scratched, so everything is cool here.
Yeah.
There's a great bit where he's trying to fix his car's engine and he climbs entirely inside of the car, which was very funny.
Yeah, I mean, true to the car humor. So, according to the program, the title of the film comes from a popular 1913 song, quote, "He'd have to get out and get under, open parenthesis, to fix up his automobile." Close parenthesis.
Get out of the car and get under the car to fix it.
Unquote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which he does in the film.
Yes.
Yeah.
Car Trouble, the movie.
Pretty much, yeah. But like, really, it does very much feel like this is, like, he's got his comedy persona fully formed.
Yeah.
And this is like Harold Lloyd firing on all cylinders, kind of.
Well, this is like, you know, it's like these maybe late 1910s, early 1920s comedic shorts where you have a premise and you're wringing all the jokes out of the premise. But I think that like a lot of that other stuff, a lot of that other stuff, it's like we have the premise and then we're gonna bleed it dry, you know. And this one is like, let's keep it dynamic. We're gonna change up the setting. We're gonna change up the scenario. We're gonna add in a banana peel, you know, so that it's like the same kind of ideas, but it's not like wringing it dry. It's just like giving it new context.
The fact that they get two jokes out of a single banana peel, and they both work, is pretty amazing.
Banana peels are so funny.
They are. But just the fact that it's like they do that joke twice and it doesn't feel like repeating itself. That it's like, it's like, no, we do it again, but it's different the second time enough that, But then we get to the highlight of maybe the whole first day of this festival. Yeah,
and another one that we can add to our list of like the most famous silent films of all time.
Yeah, for sure.
What have we seen so far? We've like iconic silent films. We've
Trip to the Moon.
Trip to the Moon.
Like Intolerance.
Another garbage D.W. Griffith.
Yeah.
We got
Nosferatu.
Great Train Robbery.
Yeah.
Nanook of the North.
Yeah.
And standing amongst these is Safety Last.
For sure, yeah.
Maybe one of the more iconic silent film images of Harold Lloyd hanging from a clock many stories up in the air.
And something that's sort of reused in things enough where even if you have never heard of Safety Last, I feel like a lot of people have seen the image of, like, hanging from a clock. Like, that is such a iconic reused image of, like, hanging off the hand.
Before I did this podcast, I was not aware of Harold Lloyd. I was aware of the image of a guy hanging off a clock, but I thought it was like Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin. Because I thought, like, they were the two silent film comedy slapstick guys. There's three. I mean, there's plus Snub Daniels or whatever his name is.
Right. I mean, plus, like, Roscoe Arbuckle, plus Mabel Normand, plus, like, a lot of other people that aren't quite as well known now, but were incredibly famous at the time.
Yeah, I'd heard of Fatty Arbuckle. I had not heard of Roscoe Arbuckle, his true name. Snub Pollard.
I had not heard of Snub Pollard.
No, that's a funny name.
It is a funny name. And he made a funny movie. A couple funny movies.
Yeah.
But Safety Last is kind of a masterpiece, I think. Like, it is an incredible film.
It was,
I went into this movie super jazzed to see this, and I was, like, very excited for, like, this is the big Harold Lloyd movie. Like, this is his movie, you know? The most famous one. And I was still kind of blown away by how good it was.
The expectation doesn't serve it poorly because this movie is so fun.
Yeah.
And really tense.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is it's less sort of narratively ambitious than I think some of the other stuff that certainly than, like, the last couple Chaplin films. Like, Chaplin's
like,
really
compared
leaning,
to, like, The Kid or something.
Especially with The Kid, Chaplin's, like, really leaning into that thing of, like, I want drama. Like,
I want to tell a story.
I want to have some jokes, but I really want this to be, like, a very narrative heavy, like, dramatic, tear-jerky thing. And I feel like Harold Lloyd is like, no, I want people to pull their hair out of their head because of how stressed they are watching.
But also laughing.
Yeah.
It does seem like, you know, Buster Keaton is going for this, like, formal thing. He's going for absurdity. I have in the past, if we're to, like, move ahead with Buster Keaton stuff, I have seen Sherlock Jr. and College. And, you know, they don't have the schmaltz that Chaplin has. And I think that, like, maybe a little less so. They don't have, like, the kind of daring of, like, the stunt work.
But they're super inventive in their own way, right? Like, the Buster Keaton thing is pushing things forward in its own direction, right?
But Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd are definitely going in a direction.
They're the two, like,
more similar,
heavy guys.
They're and more comedy heavy. You know, like, they're going in a direction that is more similar to each other than either is similar to Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, I thought of Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol watching this movie. Of just the idea that Tom Cruise now is, like, super famous for all of his stunt stuff and, like, how willing he is to, like, put his own body on the line for the stunt or, like, the scene or the shot. And that is 100% what Harold Lloyd is doing a lot of the time. And he's using doubles sometimes and camera tricks and stuff, but it's still, like, the end goal is the same, which is, like, I can't believe what I'm watching, and I'm so and it's not just the fact that he's, like, hanging off a building, because there's so much more to it than that, right? It's, like, the fact that it's, like, each level, like, story of the building he's climbing up,
it's, like, ratcheting up the
tension because
it's a game of death.
The whole thing is that he's climbing up this building as to sort of double his best friend, who actually is an accomplished climber who can climb buildings. And the idea is that he's going to get to the first story and then they're going to swap out.
Yeah.
But then his friend is getting chased by a policeman.
Classic.
Because they pulled a silly gag on him earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
Through mistaken identity. And so he's getting chased up the building by the cops. So there's this, like, parallel chase movie happening inside the building as Harold Lloyd is climbing the outside of it.
Yeah.
And, like, each time he gets to a new level of the building, like, a different like a dog comes out and tries to get him, or like
so many things. Like they offer him a rope. And then they don't like tie it down in time, so he reaches for the rope and it just
then it's
falls
like he
down.
spends so long trying to even get to the rope.
Yeah.
And it's like if he can just get to the rope, he'll be saved. But then of course he grabs the rope and immediately just falls because the rope isn't tied to anything.
It's so in the intro they were talking about how like they filmed the end of this movie first, and then they were like, how do we get
how
to
can
this
we reverse
end?
engineer a movie that can lead to this climax?
Because the climax is so well engineered, I think.
It's incredible.
Like this stuff with these like preceding levels, they get like, you know, they get all of this mileage out of like what can happen as he's climbing up this building. What can pop out of the windows, what can hit him in the head, what he can drop on the ground, right?
But it's like each one is also set up before it's paid off, right? Like you see what's happening inside each of the floors before it comes out and like causes him conflict.
Yeah.
Right? Like we set up, oh, there's a dog in this one. Oh, there's like people pushing a board out of this one.
Yeah.
Oh, these windows open in a weird way. So it's not like they're not coming out of nowhere. Like it gives you time for the tension to build because you know what's coming each time.
Yeah.
Kind of. And I feel like that culminates on the top floor when there's this spinning thing. I don't even know what that's called.
Maybe like a weather vane or something.
It's a spinny thing, and he keeps almost like
hitting it with his
head and not quite. And it's like, oh, he almost hit his head, but then like, oh, he got distracted. He's doing this other thing, and that happens like 3 or 4 times.
It's good. It's really
until
good.
Finally, this thing does hit him in the head.
It pays off.
Oh, it's so good.
It's like teasing you the entire time. You're waiting for the moment. It's like ratcheting up the tension, but it's also like you're expecting a laugh when he gets bonked in the head, right? And so it's like every time it's just like bring you right up to the moment and then like bring you back down again, you know? And so you're just like, when's he gonna get hit in the head and almost fall off the building?
I was sweating watching this movie. It's so tense.
It's an edge of your seat kind of climax.
But it's the sort of thing where I feel like there's almost an inherent watching movies that are this old, there's a bit of sort of like I feel like we tend to grade them kind of on a curve of like, well, this is good for the time. You know? Like, oh, this is really impressive for when it came out.
Yeah.
I feel like Safety Last is just a good movie, period, that is impressive.
Yeah.
Like,
no qualifiers.
Exactly. Like, parts of this movie are as tense as Mission Impossible movies in terms of just like, oh, he's gonna die. Like, the actual actor, Harold Lloyd, is gonna die doing this.
It's okay, he's already dead.
True.
I mean, honestly, I felt more tense watching this than a Mission Impossible movie.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, I was comparing it to it's more comparable to Mission Impossible, but in terms of like the tension that I felt, I was comparing it to Hitchcock.
Right.
If you're talking about suspense.
But then it's also very funny.
Yes.
Much like a lot of like Jackie Chan stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of influence from this movie. You can like really feel how influential this movie in particular was. Like this specific movie, not just the like overall oeuvre of, I said oeuvre, which is a very pretentious word, but
it's a James Lipton word.
The oeuvre of silent comedians.
What is your favorite curse word?
But I do feel like that is such a, people cite that so much. Like Jackie Chan cites that. Like people who make Mission Impossible movies cite that. Like, oh, we love the Harold Lloyds and the Buster Keatons. You know.
Yeah.
And it is like those guys were just so damn good at it that people are still like trying to match that.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is a great example of like, this is like some of the best examples in like all of film history of tension and also like cutting tension with comedy and building tension at the same time as like, because comedy is also built around tension and timing, so it's like you're getting stressed, but it's also like as the tension builds and the stress of the situation builds, it gets funnier because like you're like, how much more can happen? You're like, oh, clearly we've reached the peak of this thing, and then more it gets worse, and you're just like, what? How
It's cool.
How is this possible?
It feels like it's half the movie, though it's probably less than half. This scene where he's like scaling the building, and there's some like kind of contrived plot reasons why he's doing it. He's like trying to.
He works at a department store. He's trying to like get a big bonus for like doing a stunt that's gonna like raise awareness for the store. The plot of this movie is very contrived. It's very much like you can kind of feel the way that it was like we did this cool big third act set piece and then we made up a bunch of bullshit to justify it.
It's also like really sitcom-y in just this like I've told all these lies and I've got to like navigate it. And
I told my girlfriend I'm a manager at this store and now I have to pretend to be.
Yeah. I'm taking 2 girls to the prom at the same time.
But even, like, leading, like, the entire rest of the movie that leads up to that is still a really funny,
it's a lot of fun.
Well-built movie. All the stuff of him, like, working at the store and having to, like, there's, like, him pretending to be the manager, but then there's the stuff of him, like, the crowds coming in. He's, like, selling fabric to people.
Yeah.
And all the gags with that are all great.
It's great gags. I mean, I feel like until this kind of like climactic building climbing scene happened, I was feeling like the movie was a little thin.
Yeah.
And it is in a lot of ways, right? Yeah. Like it's thin, like thematically. It doesn't have a lot going on. It doesn't have a lot of feeling in it, like genuine feeling, you know. But that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
It's about the tension of climbing up the side of the building and what kind of are we gonna do on the way there, basically.
But even still, like it holds together as a whole cohesive movie, I think, better maybe than I expected it to.
Yeah, considering that so much of it is just like a justification for the end of it, like it works still.
For sure. It's great. I love. This is one of my favorite things we've watched for this entire show.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Safety last.
Yeah.
It feels kind of fitting that we're right near the Evel Knievel Museum.
Right. Yeah.
I wonder if we should like try and make our way over there at some point.
I'm curious if Evel Knievel ever talked about the influence of Harold Lloyd on it.
We may or may not be able to go. It might not be open on Sunday actually, so we'll see.
Lots of
1923
Covered
stuff.
Wagon was what is it? 10 Commandments, number 1 highest grossing movie of 1923.
Number 1.
Covered Wagon, number 2.
2.
Safety Last, number 3.
Was Safety Last number 3?
I believe so. I think that says it in the program.
There you go. We're watching the big hitters.
Exactly.
We're watching the Endgame. We're watching the what's the number 1 grossing movie that's not a Marvel movie?
They're all James Cameron movies.
It's just James Cameron, Marvel.
It's Avatar, Titanic, and Avatar 2.
God. What a state that we live in. What a state.
Yeah.
So, lots more 1923
in the 20s,
stuff.
Like, biggest grossing movies. It's all DeMille and Harold Lloyd.
True.
What a state we live in.
What a state
Cinema
we live
is
in.
dead.
It only just started and it's dead. See you tomorrow for day 2 of the Kansas Silent Film Festival. So welcome back. We're most of the way through, 2/3 of the way through day 2 of the festival.
Indeed.
Day 2 of 2. Day 2 of 2.
We have, 2 movies left?
We've got 1 big movie and 1 short.
Yeah.
By a yucky man. What we watched this morning was... Oh, I guess there's a documentary about Cecil B. DeMille that we'll talk about after as we talk about
10 Commandments.
10 Commandments.
Yeah. Which we haven't seen yet, but the documentary was about that, and so we're going to watch that tonight.
So we started off with 2 shorts. The first one was called Miles of Smiles, with Baby Peggy.
Baby Peggy, everyone's favorite.
She did good.
Yeah.
Baby Peggy.
Yeah.
She's doing a bit of a nutty professor type thing.
I was gonna say like sort of a Parent Trap situation,
That's better.
which is probably more accurate.
Yeah.
In that she plays identical twins who are separated when they're babies and then meet back up, and they're like, one is from like a wealthy family and the other one works for the railroad.
Works for like the miniature railroad
Yeah.
public transit system that's run by kind of like a mafioso
Yeah.
con man and employs like 4-year-old children.
Yeah,
to
as you do, that you
Yeah.
find on the train tracks. That
he finds a little girl playing on the train tracks, and he goes, "Methinks a new employee
Yeah.
this makes." It was nice. It was charming.
It was fun. Yeah.
It had some fun. It was very like Parent Trap, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It had these very like show-offy, like, we're twins and we're both on the screen
Yeah.
at the same time
Split screen
kind of thing.
stuff,
And she
and,
plays
like,
both.
And like, oh, they're both wearing the same clothes now, and everyone's mistaking one for the other. It's all of those jokes that you could make,
Yeah.
all rolled up. It's very sort of straightforward, but fun.
Yeah.
A little short.
Yeah. 10 minutes. Pretty
Yeah.
pretty simple, pretty sweet. She finds her family again in the end.
Yeah. It
And-
did remind me a bit of Baby Herman from Roger Rabbit. Not in the actor Baby Herman. I feel like the character Baby Herman in Roger Rabbit is almost sort of a bit of a parody of movies like this,
Like
but in
like
cartoon form.
like movies just about cute
Like
kids.
yeah, like a cute kid gets into hijinks and is like
There's definitely
gets into peril but doesn't realize it, that kind of thing.
Yes, yeah. There definite hijinks in this
Yeah,
film.
yeah.
And then next we watched a 44-minute long short.
Yeah.
Might be like 3 or 4 reels, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Called Bellboy 13.
Yeah. It's also fun.
Yeah, it was all right, I thought.
Is a Douglas MacLean short who's sort of a lesser known silent comedian. But he did a lot of movies.
Many of which are lost.
Yeah.
Which is part of why
Mhm.
he's lesser known.
Yeah, a bit more of kind of like sitcom-y,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, that's a good
situational
reference point.
comedy. I
Yeah.
guess that's what sitcom means, literally. Or sort of like screwball comedy type stuff. Less about like stunts or slapstick gags and more about like, look at this crazy thing he's gotten himself into. But it was fun. There was a really funny whole section in it about communism or Bolsheviks,
Yeah.
as it says in the intertitles.
Yeah, so like he starts working, it just kind of like happens into a job as a bellboy, which is weird. The movie's called Bellboy 13, but he's not a bellboy until like 2/3 of the way
Yeah.
through the movie.
I'd say about
for like about, I don't know, 10-15 minutes.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, there's a point where he wants to like get back together with his girlfriend,
Mhm.
and the way that he feels like he can wield his power is by striking.
Yeah.
Just by having everybody strike. They're all like, everything's unfair, everything's horrible, labor conditions are bad, we won't stop striking until our demands are met.
Yeah.
And then everyone's crying Bolsheviks, and they say down with capital.
Yeah.
and it's all completely disingenuous, which
Yeah.
you know, as a filthy commie, I wasn't a huge fan of. But
It's very very topical 1920s
yeah,
humor, though.
yeah, true,
Which
true.
is funny.
But yeah, so his girlfriend gets back together with him, and then he goes, okay, everybody strikes off, our
Yeah.
demands have been met. Just this guy commandeering it for himself.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have a lot to say about this one.
No.
It's just like, it was fine, I
Yeah.
thought.
It had kind of the intertitles were kind of interesting because they were like very elaborate
Yeah.
painted intertitles.
And really like strange looking too.
Yeah. Some of them verged, I think, a bit on like some racist caricature type imagery. I don't know. It definitely evoked a certain like minstrel showy style at certain times with the faces.
Well, yeah, there was
But they're very surreal. They're very
Yeah.
like bizarre looking.
I would say more like Ren and Stimpy. It was
maybe, yeah.
it was
I'm anything from this period. I'm just sort of like, I'm just ready for it to be gross in some way.
and then we had a break, but it was only an hour long, so
Yeah.
we needed to grab coffees before before the next set.
Re up on our caffeine intake.
Rather than doing a quick recording about those. So we'll move right on to our first movie of the set that we just watched, which is Little Old New York.
Yeah, which is a Marion Davies picture. I had never seen any of her actual movies. Me
either.
Knew of her as a person, but I'd never seen any of her. I feel like she's most famous for being William Randolph Hearst's mistress, which is kind of unfair to her work as an actor.
Because I thought she was good in this.
Yeah,
she was. This was a fun movie. I actually felt like this was.
It's a little long. And a little stuffy at times, I thought. It
meanders a bit.
Yeah.
But I think it like meanders in the way that like a novel does. You know?
True.
I mean, it is based on a novel. Yeah, and it's also starring Harrison Ford, by the way.
The original Harrison Ford from the 20s.
Yeah, a different Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
In the love interest basically role. The setup of this one is that
it's in like early 1800s New York City.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of stuff with this guy dies and leaves behind this inheritance.
But it's to a specific nephew of his.
Right. Who lives in Ireland but dies on the boat over. So his sister has to pretend to be the nephew by getting a haircut that is still pretty feminine for the 1920s, I feel like. Her disguise is not that effective.
Yeah.
But everyone, she shows up and it's like, this is the nephew. And all the men there are like, yes, this very attractive young man just walked in.
We have definitely seen this bit before.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this movie reminded me of I Don't Want to Be a Man to a degree.
As I Don't Want to Be a Man mixed with Daddy Long Legs.
Yeah. With maybe a little Mulan thrown in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not everything about this movie works, but no. I thought that they get some good jokes out of it. I think there's some good like emotionality in it because like there's all of this like stakes with the money, you know. There's a point where the stepson of the guy who died is Harrison Ford. He's the love interest in the movie eventually, you know. In the last 2 minutes, he is.
I mean, he is kind of throughout the whole thing. It's just he's sort of very confused about it for a while.
Right, yes. Because he's like, you're a little boy.
Yeah.
You're a little boy who is my cousin.
Yeah.
Oh, you're just my cousin? Great. And then the director walks in and goes, step cousin.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Pretty much.
Like, there's a point where Harrison Ford's character is really in need of money, and he like takes this like risky bet on a boxing match.
Yeah.
And because like so much is on the line for the characters that you've known for the last half an hour, like hour and a half, it adds a lot of tension into the boxing match, I thought.
A boxing match where one of the boxers is the Terror of Hoboken, which is a great boxer name.
Yes, this is very, very New York, this movie.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's at least partially shot on location, right? It was shot in a studio in Harlem, which then burned down during the production of it. But like, there's a scene on the Hudson, which I'm fairly certain
that looked like the Palisades that was in the background behind them.
Exactly.
So yeah,
probably. I was like, yeah, it looks like the Hudson where it is supposed to be.
I mean, most of it was shot, I think, in New York before they like picked up shooting again after the fire in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you know, he's confused. He's like in the guy who dies' will. He is to be like the caretaker of this young boy, quote unquote. He has weird feelings. He's with a kind of like stuffy woman who just disappears once at some point in the picture.
A stuffy woman who likes to name drop people she's met in England, in London and Paris.
There's a ridiculous bit which I think we both like looked at each other when this happened in the movie, where this girl is from Ireland, and when her whole bit is figured out and she's impersonating someone, and she also like did a false fire alarm. Ooh.
Yeah.
So she's like in court, and they're like, "We have to punish you. We have to send you back to London, but you're Irish." And I was like,
They're Americans. They don't know.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else about little old New York?
I was probably maybe a little bit less patient with this movie just because we've been watching movies all day. And so I was sort of like, all right, let's keep it going.
It does drag, but I don't know. I thought there was a lot of charming stuff about it.
For sure. Yeah. There's a lot of like funny intertitle dialogue, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think Marion Davies is very good in it.
Yeah. She and I guess it's apparently a thing that Marion Davies is in drag in a lot of her movies.
Yeah.
Dresses up as a boy or man.
Yeah.
There was a biographer of her speaking before the movie, and she was like, some people said William Randolph Hearst asked her to do this over and over again. I don't see any evidence for that.
Who's to say?
Who's to say?
I mean, the biographer probably. I feel like she did research. I mean, she wrote a book about Marion Davies. I trust her opinion.
By the way, I after we watched Toll of the Sea last week, I was just like searching some stuff on Anna May Wong, and there is a YouTube channel that is dedicated to Anna May Wong, and the person on the YouTube channel was talking about the character in Babylon that is like sort of inspired by Anna May Wong, or like based on her, and the title of the video is basically like, was Anna May Wong gay?
Yeah.
And then, so this person's like, Anna May Wong has like lots of record of, being together with men, and there were rumors that she was with women or gay or bi, but there's no evidence. So I don't think she is. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
I mean, one thing that I think is kind of interesting about the character in Babylon is I feel like that character is mostly based on Anna May Wong, but is also kind of combined with Marlene Dietrich, because her whole the whole songs that she does in the beginning is like, I don't know if that specific song is something Marlene Dietrich performed, but like her costume is very similar to the tuxedo that she wears in the movie Morocco. There's like a lot of Marlene Dietrich in that character also.
I don't know who that is.
Oh. It was someone who was rumored to have gotten together with Anna May Wong. So.
Oh, okay. What's she in? We haven't seen anything with her, have we?
Not yet. I think she might be in some German films at this point in the 20s, but I'm not sure. But we'll get to it, I think.
I'm just saying.
It's the 20s, so it's hard to say because everyone
hard
was,
to say.
They
were buried.
Because society was worse back then.
They were buried together in a coffin because they were best friends.
Yeah. A lot of that in the 20s.
So the next two movies that we watched, or the next one that we watched, the next two movies that we watched were Charlie Chaplin movies.
Yes.
The first one was a short called The Pilgrim.
Yeah, which was from 1923.
Yes.
The Pilgrim is either the last or one of the last movies that Charlie Chaplin made under his first national contract.
I think they were saying it was the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even though he had already helped found United Artists, he was still under contract with First National to make a couple more movies. So he had to make, one of them was The Pilgrim, which is a pretty, it's a Charlie Chaplin short.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
It had some good laughs in it.
Yeah, he pretends to be a priest because he's an escaped convict, and that's like the clothes that he finds. And so there's like people are trying to get married, and they're like, hey, and he is running away from them, and then he gets kind of roped into doing a church service and doesn't know how to do it, and is like lighting a cigarette and
telling a seemingly extremely violent retelling of Samson and Goliath
with beheading in it.
David and Goliath.
Yeah, different story. Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun one.
Yeah.
There's a kid who slaps him a bunch in it, which was pretty fun.
Yeah, some good bits in this. It doesn't have the kind of schmaltz of the kid.
Right? Yeah. It's like after that, it's leaning much harder back into the comedy.
Yeah. It's like, and like the kind of, it's like a light romantic angle in the way that you would find in some of his older shorts.
Yeah.
It's longer, but I don't think it suffered for it. You know,
it's well paced.
It's 44 minutes, something like that.
Yeah. It's funny that this one has a kid in it, but it's like a naughty kid who causes trouble.
And then they like kick him and stuff.
Yeah.
Charlie, I mean, honestly, like, it's a classic thing with a Charlie Chaplin movie to like kick somebody, and that's funny. But like when it's an adult kicking an annoying kid, it kind of like steps it up a notch,
How can we heighten this joke some more?
Let's kick a child.
Yeah. And then we watched a very weird, not a Charlie Chaplin movie, a Charles Chaplin movie.
In the Pilgrim, his directing credit was Charles Chaplin as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I still feel like that is a distinction, that this isn't a Charlie Chaplin picture.
Yeah.
Because he isn't in it.
The two faces of this man are Charlie and Charles.
Yeah. This is the first movie he directed that he isn't in, I think, and maybe the only one. And it's not a comedy, it's a drama. It does star Edna Purviance, which is like his frequent co-star.
Yeah.
And it's a very dramatic movie. It's very serious.
Yeah. I mean, I think like it has a card at the beginning of it, which is Charlie Chaplin saying, "Hey y'all, I'm not in this movie. Don't look for me in this movie."
Yeah. I mean, he is technically in the movie. He has a cameo.
Yeah.
I didn't spot it, but
you couldn't see his face very clearly in the cameo. Yeah. But he says, "I'm not in this movie. This is not a comedy movie. Understand that I'm trying to get more breadth as an artist.
I'm trying to create drama."
And it is like,
it was better than I thought it would be.
I liked it. I thought it was good. I mean, it has these issues of being like, I'm known for comedy, so when I do drama, I have to do drama.
Yeah, it's like he might be overcorrecting a little bit
Yeah.
at times, where it's like it's a very serious, dramatic film.
Yeah. And there are some light moments in it. There are a couple like mild laughs in it.
Yeah.
But it's really like a guy's loading up a gun, so he's gonna shoot himself.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a thing that I felt about Woman in Paris and Little Old New York both is they're both very kind of like talky movies. Mm-hmm. Before talkies were really a thing.
A lot dialogue heavy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people in rooms talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that just inherently doesn't quite work as well in silent movies as like the wacky comedies that we've seen, or the like German expressionist horror stuff.
Why do you say that? What makes you say that?
I just feel like those feel like they're really embracing a certain type of storytelling, in that I feel like Foolish Wives, I feel like kind of falls into the thing too of like, if it's relying too much on just like people sitting and talking, it drags, and it feels, maybe this is just my modern sensibilities talking, but like I feel like there's moments in Woman of Paris that work really well, and they're all like visual things, like not dialogue.
There's some really nice compositions in that movie.
But like there's maybe my favorite part of the whole movie is there's the bit where so in the beginning of the movie, Edna Purviance's character
Marie. Yeah.
She's trying to kind of like run away from home with this guy Jean, and
I just kind of
ends up-
assumed that they were like American, and then they said we're going to take a train to Paris, and then I was like, and then like, are they British? And then
everyone in this movie's French.
Yeah, it's all they're in the French countryside, but not Paris.
But so then she ends up taking the train without him and leaving him behind. That too is a very good example of like good visuals, where like you don't actually see the train pulling in, you just see the sort of like shadow of the train in front of her face.
Much less expensive.
Yeah, very much so. But so then they end up meeting years later in Paris and like reconnecting, and she hires him to paint a portrait of her. And she has this fancy dress that she's wearing for the portrait. And as he's painting, he's like, "Don't look at it. Like, wait till it's done. Can't look at it. Can't look at it." And then she peeks at, like, takes the sheet off of it and looks before it's done. And it's her in the clothes that she was wearing when she left on the train and left him behind.
Yeah.
And just that thing.
They were to be wed.
Right. Just that thing of her taking the sheet off and revealing it and reacting.
Yeah.
Is a great moment in the movie and is like a very charged, impactful scene.
Yeah.
That is relying entirely on just like the reveal of this painting.
True. Yeah. I mean, I will say, I think that my modern brain, when we talk about like a dialogue heavy movie, my modern brain, I have a cursed modern brain, but it might be working in a slightly different way. Whereas I feel like when something goes too long without a title card, my mind can kind of lose focus a little bit, you know? Like title cards, having to like hop between looking at something and reading something, like it keeps me a little active, you know? So I don't actually mind it when there's a lot of title cards.
That's a good point. Anyway, I don't want to say that there's like, these are inherently worse movies or anything like that. It's just a thing that I've noticed. Maybe I just tend to enjoy the ones that are a bit more reliant on like just purely visual stuff.
Yeah. And Charlie Chaplin knows how to do visual stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and he also knows how, like, visual storytelling. Like, there is a decent amount of scenes where you don't know what people are saying, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, like, also has a lot of dialogue. I will say, I know what you're talking about with the extreme amounts of dialogue, because sometimes there will be a scene where not a lot's happening, but a lot of dialogue has to happen.
Yeah.
And so you're spending half the time, like, reading. Like, you know, it shows the characters for a second, then shows the title card, then shows them for like another second, then shows the title card, because they need to like just chew through a bunch of dialogue,
Right. Yeah.
Which I guess is what you're talking about.
We're not really being able to, but like you can't really watch the characters listen as much and react to stuff, so it's like it
breaks it up a little.
It breaks it up, and I feel like it makes those scenes feel longer because you have to show someone talking, cut to the intertitle of what they said, and then show the reaction. Whereas if it was done with sync sound, it would be you could do it in half the length and still achieve the same effect.
Which I might have pointed this out before, but that's one of the things that I think is really cool about the animated movies of this time is that they are able to have when people are talking or animals are talking in these animated shorts. They can just show the text on screen right in front of them, so they don't have to stop everything to do that.
There's occasional use of text on screen in live action stuff, but less so. I didn't think it's really almost ever used for dialogue. Like Caligari had some of that, and the Golem did.
Yeah, the Golem was just like an incantation. It was more of an effect than like
pretty much
like something to get dialogue across.
True. I thought this movie was Woman of Paris is really interesting just in that it's like it is like a Charlie Chaplin movie, but it is so different from the rest of his work.
Yeah.
Purposefully.
Yeah.
And like I don't know, I thought it was very fascinating watch for that reason.
It was fascinating and you know, I mean, I don't know, I liked it a lot. I think that this is my favorite thing that I've seen so far today. I thought it just worked really well. It, unlike other movies that worked really well, it did that we've seen, it didn't have any like icky stuff in it, you know.
I mean, I feel like the closest thing it comes to that is like it gets a little bit into like what is like a woman's place kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it feels like
I forgot about that.
It is, I think, kind of pushing against that. Like, I think it's for a Charlie Chaplin movie from 1923. It's maybe could be considered feminist, even if it wouldn't be now.
I mean, I think, you know, it's about, I mean, the main character is this person who was like basically escaping an abusive dad. Yeah. And she, as a result, has become a bit of like a flighty person. Like, I feel like these people have like a lot of interiority in this movie, which is good. Like it's I think it's like it's understanding that her flightiness like hurts other people,
Mm-hmm.
but also like she's like entitled to it in a way. Like she is yeah, when she's about to like kind of make her grand elopement to Paris with Jean, and then, you know, he has like this kind of hiccup in the plan and she's like, I'm going to Paris, you know? Like you can understand what's going on for her, you know?
Yeah.
And I think the movie has a lot of sympathy for her.
And it's really only at the very end when it's just sort of like, she's like, I just want to be a mother. I'm going to adopt a bunch of kids.
I think she's confused, honestly.
Yeah.
In that moment.
But it's like, that's the only thing in it that I was sort of like, I don't know. This is maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I know.
I think the movie is trying to present the character of Marie as someone who is like not conforming to like usual like female gender roles and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it totally succeeds.
It's yeah. I mean, you know, it was made by someone who married a 16-year-old.
Yeah. More than once.
So, you know, it's not going to be perfect along those lines. But you know, if we're talking about you know, a third wave, fourth wave feminism type thing, which is way off from where Charlie Chaplin is. But if we're to look at it through that lens, you know, that like her wanting to be kind of like I don't know, like a solo type person who you know, is with men like who's like, you know, with men in this kind of like loose way, hopping from.
She's like basically dating this like wealthy Frenchman.
Yeah.
Pretty much just so that he can like buy her lots of stuff and take her to parties and like. Right. She's living a lavish lifestyle, but these two people do not really care about each other very much. Like they're both kind of using each other for like social reasons.
Right, but they're both kind of fine with it.
Yeah.
And like she doesn't feel any, you know, she feels, I think, valid in doing that. And you know, if we're to look at it through that lens, like it's also valid if she wants to have kids. This is a new revelation at that moment, right? But it's like, it's a valid way of going through her life. And I don't know if the movie, you know, it's complicated. I don't know if the movie like comes down on any side, whether the movie thinks one is right and one is wrong.
Well, I mean, I like how at the end of the movie, right, we see her with all these kids and we assume that she has like married a man and like had a bunch of children. And then one of the kids is like, Mom, father's here. And then a priest walks in.
Yeah.
Which is a great gag.
She got thee to a nunnery.
Yeah. And then we find out that all these children are either she's like looking after them or they're adopted. That is, I guess, a little bit unclear.
I think she's like working like in a church, like helping children. Basically.
But I like how she doesn't end up like married with a bunch of children at the end. Like I like how it's she doesn't like, you know, fall into that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of trauma that happens in this movie, you know, and I think that like a lot of her love life gets a little too like wrapped up in horrors for her to like.
It's a very like melodramatic movie for sure. It has there were some funny bits though. Like he still slipped a couple.
Yeah, there was a part in the kitchen that had some stinky food.
Yeah, there was someone ashing a cigarette into a saxophone.
A tiny saxophone. I liked it a lot. I thought it was a really like emotionally nuanced movie. Honestly, like if you get back past the fact, like if I didn't know this was directed by Chaplin, you know. And I didn't feel like it was trying to prove itself and just like taking it as it is, I would say this is a fantastic movie. I liked it a lot.
Yeah. There is, I'm completely forgetting her name. There's a real person that Charlie Chaplin dated for a while that this movie might be kind of based on / inspired by. Who was a sort of, she was like involved in show business, but was kind of just famous for being famous.
Socialite.
Socialite, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah, there's an episode of You Must Remember This about her and sort of like how partially about how this movie might be like Charlie Chaplin sort of working through stuff about that relationship, or just sort of like her as a person inspiring this story partially.
Yeah. And if we were to go back to Charlie Chaplin's potential issues as a person and
too much
sexism, I mean, as this movie was being introduced to us, they were talking about how Edna Purviance has been his kind of like leading lady, basically his entire career, pretty much.
Yeah, up until this point in his career.
Up until this point, and the reason that this movie got made was because he was basically like, I think that, or at least what they were telling us is that like he was like the tramp character like needs to be in love with sweet young ladies.
Yeah, an ingenue.
And Edna, you're getting too old for this, basically. Which is really
not a great look for old Charles.
It's not a great look. It's a little harsh.
Yeah.
This movie was him trying to do that in a nice way and say, I still care about you. I still want to help you. You're my friend, right? Yeah. But like, the tramp can't be, you're getting too old to be the tramp's love interest. So we're going to like help you get into a dramatic movie career. And I want to be a dramatic director at times also, so let's usher you out of the Chaplin world with something dramatic and try and like reframe you this way. And
didn't work.
It, for some reason, it didn't work. Like honestly, I think she's really good in this movie.
Yeah, me too.
And when they were framing this, they were like, Edna Purviance was good at reacting to Charlie Chaplin, and I'm like, she does so much more in this movie than she has done in any other Chaplin stuff I've seen.
Definitely.
Like, she's just there a lot of the time.
I mean, she is the lead of the movie.
Yeah.
Which she definitely isn't in any of the...
But she gets more to work with, you know?
Yeah.
Like, the female character in a lot of these Keaton, Lloyd, Chaplin movies, it's usually someone who's just there.
Right.
And they're not, like, actually getting to do much comedic stuff.
I'm someone who's there to the point where they usually don't have a name.
Right.
They're usually the girl.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, who says that she's pigeonholed as a comedic actress? Like, she's not even doing anything comedic, she's just in comedy movies. And then when she's in this drama, I thought she was fantastic.
Yeah. But, I mean, I don't know what necessarily I think this movie got, like, a positive response when it came out, but it was also, like, people were like, it's good, but do more funny stuff, kind of.
Right. Make us laugh, clown.
Yeah. Which is, it's kind of too bad, because I do think Edna Purviance is very good in as a dramatic lead in this.
Yeah.
Let's take another break, because we need to eat dinner.
We're going to get some Kansas barbecue.
Indeed.
All right. See y'all in the next segment. All right, we're back once again.
Yeah.
To talk about the last leg of the program.
Indeed.
Which was one D.W. Griffith short from 1909 and the Ten Commandments.
The original Ten Commandments. Cecil B. DeMille made 2 of them.
The original Ten Commandments was thousands of years ago.
True, and those were on stone tablet, not film.
So we're mostly here to talk about Ten Commandments, but let's touch on this short. Which is...
I guess it's worth clowning on a little bit while we're here.
Yeah. This is D.W. Griffith in all of his worst filmmaking tendencies.
Yes. Like, not just his, like, regardless of his, tendencies as a person and his opinions and that sort of thing, but purely as a filmmaker, all of his worst instincts and tendencies.
Exactly.
It is maybe the least elegant thing I've seen from him.
The short's called The Medicine Bottle.
Yes. It almost,
feels like a parody of a D.W. Griffith short.
It's so dumb.
Yeah.
There's a girl who goes out partying,
Yeah.
which is bad.
Yeah.
And
A big hat party. Which I'm
big
starting
hats.
to think
he
that
hates big hats.
that's like a thing with him. He hated big hats so much.
Oh
There's
my
at
God.
least I think that's the third or fourth movie that touches on it.
How many axes does he not have to grind?
Who could say?
He's got vendettas
But
up the
it's
wazoo.
It's a weird hill to die on.
So yeah, she goes to a big hat party. She's supposed to give her sick grandma medicine, but the medicine is in a similar sized bottle to a random bottle of poison that's just sitting on the same counter.
Just a bottle of poison.
It just says poison, and then and then she absent-mindedly picks up the poison and takes it to the party. She takes the medicine to the party.
Right, she accidentally takes the medicine to the party instead of the poison.
Right, like she was gonna take the poison to the party. Is that what the conception was? D.W. David.
Yeah.
Wark.
What do they do at parties? They take poison.
So then she's like, my little sister, you do my task, and at midnight...
My little sister, who's like 6.
Yeah. At midnight, give Grandma a spoonful of whatever's in this bottle.
Yeah.
No, never you mind what's in the bottle. And so it's also DW doing another riff on Lone-Dale Operator, which he was...
I think this is before Lone-Dale Operator.
Or it's another riff on the Grand Guignol, original.
Right,
which I'm forgetting the name of.
Yeah.
This story that he has made so many times that he's doing another riff on it.
Right.
Which at least if you give it this something, it's like slightly different than the same story again.
Right.
Because it's like, rather than...
I forget what year Lone-Dale Operator was, though. But I think...
this is only 1 year after Griffith started making movies.
Right, but this does feel like kind of the proto version of that. It's like the most simplistic, blunt, dumb version of it.
Yeah, so it's like, rather than the original Grand Guignol one, which is like, there are some people that are in a house that is being broken into, and they call someone on the phone, and the other person is rushing to get there.
Which is suspense, also, the lowest way.
Yes. Plenty of early movies were riffing on this story. This one is a riff in that, like, more kind of women that he hates, who are the switchboard operators, are the thing that's causing the tension. Like once the irresponsible girl at the party realizes what's going on, she's trying to call home, but the switchboard operators are goofing off.
They're too busy gossiping or something. They're just chatting away with each other instead of switching the board.
But yeah, in the nick of time.
But then, they keep cutting back to the little sister, like, really slowly walking towards the grandma with the poison. And then she, like, drops it on the floor and has to go back and pour more poison to really slowly walk back over. It's like the most contrived version of this thing that, we've definitely seen.
Yeah. It's hilarious.
It definitely feels like D.W. Griffith in For His Son mode of just like, people go to parties and do drugs and drink poison. Like, everyone's out there drinking soda with cocaine in it.
Yeah, we like right before 10 Commandments was this D.W. Griffith short, and we were eating barbecue, and we were like, do we rush back to watch a D.W. Griffith short? Is that worth it? But I think it was worth it because it was hilarious. It was just like if you don't count the racism, the worst parts of D.W. Griffith.
Yeah. But it was funny because it's a really early one. We're like, oh, maybe this is him when he was like kind of experimenting with stuff and was like kind of doing interesting things.
Yeah, and he had like a bit of a like pro-labor message with corn and wheat.
And no, it's none of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. If this movie had started a terrorist organization, it would be his worst film. But sadly, there's a different movie that did that, so that takes the cake.
Right. Oh my god, this one's funny though.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a nice aperitif.
Yeah.
To this very serious movie that's afterward.
It was weirdly appropriate as like an intro to Ten Commandments, because Ten Commandments is a very like
a finger wagging movie.
Yes, exactly. A very like moralistic, like gotta be good, gotta follow the Ten Commandments, otherwise a church will fall on you.
It's interesting. I mean, we could go over the plot a little bit in a second, but like, Cecil B. DeMille, we know him as this guy who loves, I don't know, like excess drama, sex, blood, you know,
and like just grand scale, like big, big sets, big movies.
Yeah.
And this movie is that, but it's not really the movie that I thought it would be. I knew that it was set in, Exodus time and contemporary time.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't realize it was more, I thought it was more of a 50-50 thing and less of a, like, I don't know.
30-70 thing?
Yeah. Trying to go what the exact right ratio would be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's mostly a contemporary, like, morality tale.
Yes, but given the context of, honestly, not super necessary context for the movie.
Right. Even though
like, we've heard of the Ten Commandments.
Right. Even though it's far and away the best part and the only part of this movie anyone remembers or cares about, kind of.
It's the only one that I knew about.
Right, yeah.
Actually, I mainly knew about the Charlton Heston version, which is the remake that he did in the 50s.
Which is just that. Just the like, sword and sandals, like, period piece stuff.
I could be into that. Anyway, so yeah, it starts off with a pretty straightforward telling of parts of the Moses story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It kind of comes in after a lot of the plagues have already happened.
True. Yeah.
And then its big showstoppers are basically apart from the sets themselves.
Yeah.
Are the parting of the Red Sea and maybe this kind of like wild party that all of the Israelites throw while Moses is up like meditating on the mountain.
The golden what is it? The golden
calf.
Golden calf.
Yeah.
The golden calf party.
Which the person introducing it was like, of course, Cecil B. DeMille puts an orgy scene in.
Yeah.
Because this guy loves God, but also is just he loves excess and drama and extreme things.
Yeah.
He's I mean, honestly, like, a lot of the time when people are making religious movies, the religion aspect, I think, gets in the way of it being a fun and good movie. I think this is a fun movie, though.
Yeah. Parts of it are.
Yeah.
I think like the prologue, the Moses stuff is definitely the best part.
Yeah.
I think. It's the most impressive from like filmmaking standpoint, just because of like mostly just due to the scale, like hundreds, if not thousands, of extras, massive set, all the huge sphinxes, the plaster sphinxes. The like parting of the Red Sea looks really cool for a 20s effect. Like it's definitely a really ambitious, like effects driven section of the movie, which is like
the Wall of Fire looks really good too.
Yeah.
It's got, and also I thought one of the really cool effects is when the Ten Commandments are being told to Moses by God,
and they're like exploding onto the screen, literally.
There's like this kind of like explosion implosion thing, and then the letters like burst out of it.
Very dramatic.
A lot of cool effects in this movie.
Some really cool like staging and lighting too, I thought, in some of this stuff. Like there's the bit where the Pharaoh Ramses is like mourning his firstborn son, and he's like carrying him through this like shadowy dark room, and there's like a top lit sort of like statue head behind him, and he's dragging this like huge like cloak cape thing behind him, like along the floor.
There's really moody lighting in that temple,
which is something that I've seen in a couple DeMille movies.
I mean, the Cheat has
the Cheat has some really dramatic, cool lighting in it. There's some other things that reminded me a lot of the Cheat in this movie later on. But, in a less good way. But oh yeah, and then some of it is filmed in two-strip Technicolor, even if the restoration that we watched the DVD of it, and for the first half before the intermission, and then the second half was in 16mm, which was pretty cool. But
yeah, a lot of the stuff at this festival has been 16mm.
Yeah, like most
of it,
yeah.
Which is awesome. That's really cool.
Did not know or expect that.
Yeah,
and
but it really adds to the experience.
Yeah, for sure. But so the Technicolor scenes are not super well preserved, at least in the version that we watched, which was kind of a bummer because they.
I mean, unless like they were meant to be kind of like that.
I don't think so. I think
like
they're just
like
really.
The Toll of the Sea is like really punchy colors, you know?
Right? Yeah.
And like I wonder if this was meant to not like blast you in the face so hard.
Because I feel like the other stuff that I've seen in two-strip Technicolor looks more like Toll of the Sea.
I see.
Like the punchy, like red-green stuff, whereas this like is very faded, very washed out, very. It almost looks like overexposed in places.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of thought it looked a little better though.
Yeah, I don't know. I did not. I almost wish that there was. I would rather watch it in black and white if it was a better print, kind of. You know, like it looked very washed out.
I think that the less like oversaturated colors helped it feel like a suggestion of color and like a little more realistic in that way.
Maybe.
But
it's like I feel like if it was just tinted a color, it would look better.
Yeah.
None of the films we watched at this Guitar Festival have any tints on them, which has been, I guess, because most of them are 60mm prints from the 60s.
Yeah, I don't know about
and I guess
how possible that is on 16mm.
Yeah, and like a lot of the shorts, I think, don't typically have tints anyway, but I don't know, just a thing that I noticed.
Yeah. So after the Moses sequence,
there is another thing I want to point out about that.
Yeah.
There's a really cool couple of shots of like all of the chariots of the Pharaoh's like soldiers chasing after the Israelites through the desert, and it's shot like on the back of a car or a truck or something like that, like speeding along with all the horses galloping and chariots.
It's a really good scene.
Really cool shot. Like I hadn't seen a lot of that type of stuff in movies up to this point. That's exciting.
I guess the other thing I'll say about all this whole sequence is like the scale is very big, but like a lot of what's happening is on the human level, which makes me think that they could have just painted a backdrop and saved $1 million. You know,
that's not the DeMille way.
I guess not. But we were just talking about Erich von Stroheim and his excess, you know, and then so he made the most expensive movie, and then DeMille's like, let me
hold my Manhattan.
No, it's Prohibition.
Hold both my Manhattans.
Well, I'm getting distracted now, but one thing that I noticed with these movies from 1923 is a lot of them involved alcohol.
Yeah.
Like it's fully Prohibition, and yet these people are just like, we're all really drinking alcohol though, right? Which is wild. Like I wouldn't have thought that Prohibition would be taken so unseriously by so many people.
Right. I knew that it was like, it was not uncommon for people to drink during Prohibition. Like it really didn't slow things down at all. But yeah, I'm surprised at how it is, like how much it is being flaunted in popular culture in terms of just like movies are just like, we're all drinking, like no one cares.
Yeah.
And like sometimes like Woman of Paris is set in France, so they're all drinking because
and a number of them are set in the past.
Right. I mean, there was one of the Chaplin shorts, The Pilgrim. It says, in the good old days before Prohibition.
Yeah. It could have been done more cheaply. Not that I'm like a studio executive, but like a lot of the stuff, like we only get a handful of shots that involve this massively constructed like Ramses Gate. Yeah. That was probably the bulk of the cost of all of that.
Yeah.
The 100+ foot tall thing that is in the background of a few shots, but like if you look
it looks real cool.
If you look at like Babylon from Intolerance, it's like a much more detailed set.
Yeah.
and like it
Yeah.
seems
and
more
much more
expensive.
impressive looking.
Yeah,
It's like it feels more like a city set, even if it's like a bunch of pillars mainly and like
Yeah.
some stairs and stuff.
and they get more mileage out of it. Not that I'm one
sure.
to heap praise on
Look,
D.W. Griffith.
If there's
obviously.
one thing positive we can say about any D.W. Griffith movie, it's that the set in Intolerance looks real good.
Yes. All right, so that ends, and
Yeah.
then we dissolve from Moses
Mhm.
into the present.
Yeah, into the McTavish family.
Yes. Who one of them is a good little boy who
Yeah.
loves his mother,
Named John.
named John, and he is a carpenter.
Get it?
He's the good one, and he's a carpenter.
yeah.
And then there is the bad one, Danny.
Yeah.
Danny McTavish, who
Is
a
a
contractor.
little stinker.
he's a little stinker. Initially, he starts off as a little stinker,
Yeah.
and that is like the beginning of his downfall. Is that if you are a little stinker,
Yeah.
then
And-
you will go to hell.
A thing that like increases his little stinker value, as well as just a thing that amused me, is how, especially in the opening scene where we first meet him, how much he looks like Pee Wee Herman. Because he's got a little bow tie and like a gray suit. He's got
Oh
his
my
like slick
God.
back hair, and he's like doing goofy dances and stuff.
I
And
think
I'm like,
this is slicked back.
it was slick back. It
Okay.
wasn't pushed back. He does not care or respect about the Ten Commandments. He thinks they're silly and dumb and old fashioned.
Yeah.
And he openly mocks them in front of his very staunchly religious mother, who's very sort of like has her little glasses and is very buttoned up and very
Yeah.
like pearl clutchy kind
She's
of.
just like, she carries her Bible around everywhere she goes. She loves God.
Yeah.
She loves Jesus.
She loves them commandments too.
She loves the commandments in
Yeah.
particular.
Yeah.
And then she
Real
has
big
raised a
commandment
son who flaunts them.
Yeah.
He says God is Dead Part 3 with Kevin Sorbo. He says the 10 Commandments, I'll break every single one of them just
Yeah.
for fun.
And then he does.
Yes.
But so Danny gets kicked out of the house because he's mocking the Ten Commandments, and then so he goes to a what is it? A burger,
A diner.
like a diner, but it's referred to something. It's like a
Lunch
a
place.
lunch trailer or something.
Yeah.
A lunch shack. I don't know. He goes to a diner.
He goes to a 1920s Waffle House.
Yeah, and then there's a poor woman named Mary who is carrying her dog around in the rain, who steals his sandwich through the window.
She hasn't eaten in a day.
Yeah, and then he chases after her because she stole a sandwich. And he chases her, and while she's running away, she runs into the McTavish family home, the carpenter shop.
And they kind of give her refuge.
Yeah,
And then it turns out that Danny comes home and
Yeah.
the thief is there.
and then they all sit down for a nice Sunday dinner.
Yeah. And it begins yet another silent movie love triangle.
Yeah, you got it. It's basically a legal requirement at this point. And at least I feel like the triangle aspect is pretty present throughout, but it's like it doesn't stay too long in this sort of like what's gonna happen. It's like
Right.
Mary
It's just
and Danny
a
sort of
simmering
like
jealousy.
yeah, Mary and Danny get together pretty quick,
Mhm.
and the sort of end of the first part of the movie before the intermission is them running off together to get married and break as many commandments as they can.
Yeah. Like the mother is initially takes Mary
Mhm.
in.
Yeah,
But she realizes that she's also a heathen.
yeah,
And
because
it's
she plays dance music on a Sunday.
Yeah, and she almost gets mad and kicks out her good son, her good religious son, because he's like, "Mom, can't they just enjoy some music on Sunday?
Yeah.
It's not so bad."
No.
He's always trying to make peace.
Yeah.
And she can't accept it.
Yeah, no dance records on Sunday.
it kind of goes forward a couple years.
3-year time jump.
Yeah,
And Danny is now a successful, like, real estate mogul.
Which he is like, he was like, I'm going to prove to you that I will succeed by breaking all of the commandments.
Yeah.
I'll become rich, in spite of God.
Yeah, it says, for every building he built, he tore down a piece of his soul. Which is, a little harsh. And so his project he's working on is this massive church, but he's trying to skim some money off the top by using bad concrete mixed with too much sand and not enough concrete mix.
It's low quality concrete mixed at a bad ratio with it's like 10 parts sand to 1 part concrete.
Yeah. I think he actually said 12 parts to 1. So he's building basically a big old sandcastle. And he hires his good brother John to be the carpenter on the project.
Mm-hmm. Not a lot of carpentry needs in a church, probably.
No, you gotta build the scaffolding and all that kind of stuff.
It's not like part of the actual church. The church is... I mean, it's weird for a church to be made out of concrete anyway.
True, yeah, you think stone more than concrete.
Yeah.
But...
whatever.
Yeah.
There's a point where Mary comes up to the top of the church, and then a piece of it crumbles off, and she almost falls down.
Yeah.
And
John grabs her, because he's also up there.
And so then he realizes, like, what's going on here? This church is built on crumbling concrete.
Yeah. Also, very quick, before that happens, they ship the concrete mix, or some of their construction equipment, or I believe it's supposed to be the concrete mix, gets shipped from, where is it? Calcutta, or it's like a leper island off of Calcutta.
Calcutta via a leper island.
Yeah, and then there's this wild scene of a woman cutting her way out of like a burlap sack on the dock and escaping into the night. And I was like, what movie is this now?
It felt very The Cheat, that scene.
Yeah, it felt like something from like The Vampires. Or it felt like Irma Vep showed up for one scene.
Irma Vep smuggling herself off of a leper island.
She would do that.
Yeah.
So that's set up for the future. And so when they're up top on the church, Mary spies Danny getting into the car with this mysterious French-Chinese woman who's been seducing him.
Like instantly.
Yeah.
She walks in and she's like, oh, a guy? Let me seduce him.
Yeah. In a very, like, 1910s, 1920s vamp manner of just, like, walking in, like...
She vamps it
hello!
up. You just did kind of like a vampire pose. Like a...
Yeah, pretty much.
But
yeah.
You mean vamp as in vampire, not vamp as in vampire.
I mean, they're almost synonymous at this point. Like, there's not that big a difference.
Nosferatu is not the same as Irma Vep.
No, it's true. Yeah.
But, yeah, so she, like, puts his cigarette, puts, like, you know, I don't know, takes his cigarette and then smokes some and then puts it back in his mouth. And
yeah.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
She sees, or Mary, from the roof of the church, sees him get in the car with this woman.
Yeah.
And he's like, and then she's like, well... He's down to one commandment left to break. He hasn't
killed anyone yet.
Yeah.
He's done all the others though. And then so they find out about the concrete is crumbling and is basically just sand. And so John orders all the construction halted and no one's allowed to go into the church anymore. But just at that moment, their mom shows up and wants to go in the church, and the guy is supposed to not letting anyone in. It's like, oh well. She's like, well, I'm the, you know, the construction owner's mother, so I can go in. And the guy's like, all right, that's fine. And so she goes in and looks up at the Ten Commandments thing that's on the wall of the church. And just in that moment... a
giant crack.
Yeah.
And then...
the whole wall
falls
collapses.
On top of Mama McTavish.
Which does not kill her instantly, but... So then they rush down, they find her there, and Danny runs in. Danny comes back, right? He finds out about it.
Yeah, and he's definitely pretty torn up about it. He was like,
Yeah.
I wanted to scam everything and build a crumbling church, but I didn't want it to fall on anybody, you know?
Not especially not my own mom.
Yeah.
But so then she sort of, with her dying breath, she says like, "Oh, this was my fault because I taught you to fear God and not love Him, and love is always the answer." And then she dies.
What do you think about that?
I do think of all the messaging in this movie, that is one that I agree with. Of like, your faith shouldn't be fear based. I feel like that is a good message to give to people. And then the sort of thesis of the movie is stated in one of the intertitles, which is if you break the Ten Commandments, they will break you.
In Soviet Russia, Ten Commandments break you.
Pretty much. And then I thought that would be the end of the movie. Like, oh,
yeah,
there
me
it
too.
is. Like,
Yeah.
you know, he broke all the commandments, and they broke.
And his mother died, and
Now he is broken.
Yeah.
But there's still this whole plot involving the vamp woman. I forget her name. It turns out, because of the church collapsing, he gets all this bad press, and it turns out that Danny's kind of broke. Anyway, and so he tries to go to this vamp woman to get the pearls that he gave her back, so he can sell them or get money back from it somehow. And she's like, "Oh ho ho, I'm actually from a leper colony, so you're kind of fucked either way." Which upsets him. And so he shoots her. Which
in for a penny, in for a pound.
right. At least two notable things. One is that when she is shot, she grabs hold of this like curtain.
Yeah.
And pulls the curtain down.
And it tears ring by ring.
Right. Which is, I don't know if it's like a confirmed thing, but it's like almost definitely where Hitchcock got that from for Psycho. It's like, it's the same shot of like the curtain
and it like
tearing.
really focuses in on that aspect of it, which is good. It's well done.
It's really effective.
I mean, like for its kind of like sillinesses, and like I think that there's a lot of really strong stuff in this movie.
Yeah, this whole section is the other part that reminded me of The Cheat a lot. Of it sort of like mysterious Asian like troublemaker villain stuff.
Has
is
kind
like,
of a den, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of like incense burning and stuff, and like statues.
Yeah, when they introduce that woman, there's a guy that tells Danny that like the scent of French perfume and Oriental incense is too strong for a man to resist.
Couldn't tell this movie was from the 20s before. But anyway, so then with her dying breath, she says maybe the hardest thing you can say to someone who has just murdered you, which is, "I'll tell the devil you'll be." Oh,
like,
what is it?
Like basically, like I'll tell the devil that he'll be seeing you soon.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is there are some really good lines in this movie.
Yeah.
There are some good lines that Danny has, some like real like kind of kick ass like I shun God lines, and like I think I'm cool, you know.
Danny also refers to himself as Papa a lot, which is very funny. He's like, Papa needs to get down and start praying, I think is when he says sort of like sarcastically at one point. So then Danny is now on the hook for murder also, in addition to the accidental death that he just caused. And so then he thinks he has leprosy, and so he runs back to Mary, his wife, and he's like, I have leprosy. She's like, don't touch me. But then the police show up and she hides him anyway. And the police are like, hey, if you see him, he's wanted for murder. Just FYI. They don't find him and Danny escapes out the window.
He escapes out the window, hops on a speedboat.
As you do.
And
the speedboat named it the Defiance.
Very subtle.
And then Mary is very distraught and sort of stumbles through the rain once again.
Vaguely aiming to kill herself.
Yeah.
I think.
But she goes back to the John's carpentry shop where they first met. And he kind of consoles her and kind of convinces her that life is worth living. And then the sun rises and she looks at her hands and she doesn't think that she has leprosy anymore.
And he says, "The light reveals all."
Yeah.
The light.
Or it's like the light made it all better. Or
Yeah.
I forgot. I'm paraphrasing, but it's something along those lines. And also, Danny crashes his speedboat into a cliff. That too.
And then he saw the devil.
Did he?
I mean, not in the movie, but that's what happened.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's in your imagination.
That was like, I was just talking to someone and they said you were on your way.
You lie to get into hell here. You have to lie. Wait, no, that's not one of the commandments. Lying. I don't.
It's not?
I don't think so.
Weird.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
We're very tired, if you couldn't tell.
No, it's more that I just don't know the Bible.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to be seeing the devil next.
Yeah.
One thing that was in this movie and not the Pilgrim and A Woman in Paris, which I did not know was a thing, is that people wore these like dark armbands.
Oh, right.
To signify that they were in mourning.
Yeah. Which is in the 1920s didn't really have the connotation that it would now.
Yeah.
After the 30s.
Yeah, you got to be careful with armbands.
Yeah, armbands not really a big fashion accessory anymore. Not really in use for most things.
I didn't know about that though.
I did. Like I recognized what it was, but it still was just like, it is a weird sight either way.
Yeah. Do you have anything else on Ten Commandments?
I didn't love it. It felt very preachy to me. In general, it is. Like you said, it's very finger waggy.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. Follow those commandments.
Yeah.
Even though one of the early scenes is, right, a starving woman stealing food to feed herself, and it's like,
don't steal.
And it's like, I don't know. I'm kind of like, if you starving, I think it's morally okay to steal to feed yourself.
Yeah.
I'm a real Jean Valjean. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway.
It's a little reduplicative.
Yeah. So even that, I feel like this movie is very blunt and yet also at times kind of muddled in its, like, moral messaging.
Yeah, which kind of just helped me ignore it and enjoy the spectacle.
Right, yeah.
So I had fun.
Yeah. It is, because of its sort of, like, grandiosity, I think it ends up being very entertaining for that reason.
Yeah.
Not only in, like, for all the intentional ways of, like, the big sets and the set pieces and, like, the church caving in and, like, the parting of the Red Sea, all that stuff, but then also in just, like, it's just a silly movie.
Yeah. It's pulpy. It's, it's a little trashy.
Right, yeah. There's kind of, Cecil B. DeMille has that kind of, like, lurid undercurrent through a lot of his stuff, so...
Which is an interesting juxtaposition with finger wagging morality.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
He wants to have his cake.
Yeah.
And also eat it.
Yeah, because why have a cake if you can't eat it?
It'll just go bad. Do you have any thoughts on the festival as a whole?
Yeah, a lot more film projection than I thought, which was a nice surprise.
It was awesome.
It was a good mix of different types of movies, I thought. Like they showed the top 3 box office movies in America for 1923,
which were Ten Commandments, and then
Safety Last.
Then Covered Wagon.
Oh, okay.
And then Safety.
No, I think you're right.
And then Safety Last.
Yeah, and then number 4 is Hunchback of Notre Dame, another big set movie.
Yeah, it was really great. I mean, I think we've talked about this a little bit earlier, but it was really great just getting to see every single movie with live score.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was interesting, like, hearing... Honestly, I haven't heard a lot of organ music before, and it's interesting to hear all of the different sounds that an organ can make.
Yeah. Yeah, because it really runs the gamut of, just, like, sonic sounds.
Yeah.
Of, like, what types of I don't know, types of sounds, whatever.
Yeah.
You said it better.
The sonic gamut.
But then another cool thing was, in addition to, like, the scoring for, like, the headliners, they would have another person doing sort of like sound effects / sort of like backup, like percussion stuff.
Yeah.
So like percussion as part of the score, and also like selective sound effects for different things.
One of the things that we learned during the kind of lecture that opened this festival, talking about like the movie-going experience in the silent era, or one of the things that I learned at least, I knew that sometimes silent movies would be played with orchestras, sometimes it would be just a little piano in a small town, something like that, and it kind of like ranged all the way in between. Sometimes it would have like a quartet or something like that, but they were talking about how these like really big theaters, these movie palaces in big cities, would have many or all of their shows with entire orchestras. Or they would have some shows that they like charged extra for, which were their deluxe shows. So their deluxe shows had a whole orchestra, and then they had like regular shows that might just have an organist or a pianist. And I was realizing when I was thinking about when I saw that it was like the RPX of its day, you know?
Yeah.
It was like the premium large format that like you see the silent movie with the orchestra instead of just the organist. It made me really want to see a silent movie with an entire orchestra. Like, that would be so cool.
I believe the only movie I've seen with an entire orchestra isn't a silent movie, is Jurassic Park. Because I saw that at the Philharmonic last year.
I got to see the first two Lord of the Ringses with an orchestra, which was great. And earlier, or I guess last year, I saw a bunch of live scored Looney Tunes with an orchestra, which was really, really fun. Felt appropriate for Looney Tunes.
But I've never seen a silent film with an orchestra.
It would be hard to pull enough people to justify an orchestra these days, but I feel like it's got to happen.
Maybe some big ticket like Metropolis or something, they might be able to pull that off.
We haven't gotten to 1927 yet, so I don't know what Metropolis is. I don't know what you're talking about.
Get out of here! You know what I'm talking about. Another thing about Ten Commandments is we watched a documentary about the set. This morning. It's actually the first movie we watched this morning.
Documentary from 2016.
About the set which Cecil B. DeMille built and then immediately buried, so that no one else could use it for like a knockoff movie after they had left it. And the documentary is mainly about the 20 to 30 years of attempts to like organize an archaeological dig to actually dig up the set and like reconstruct some of the statues and things built for it. But Northern California permit laws are awful, and they kept dragging them down.
That's the long and short of it, is that they kept trying to do this and stuff kept getting in the way for 30 years.
Right. But I mean, the same thing kept getting in the way, which was a single like permit office. Which is really disheartening.
It just makes me think, when I was watching that movie, it made me think, well, why don't people just let other people do stuff? You know? There's no harm in going to dig that stuff up.
It was
if you want to dedicate your life to
absolutely a case, a very transparent case of just like, no, give us money. Like, we have the power to force you to give us money, and we're going to take that, even if we don't really have a real case for it.
Someday we'll all live in a better society where everybody can just do cool stuff and no one will stop them from doing it for no reason.
Another thought about Ten Commandments is I thought it was kind of interesting that this movie is all about like the Ten Commandments, like the rules that you do not break. Like the opening title card says they are not laws, they are the law. And I just think it's interesting that this movie was made right around the same time that like the idea of film censorship was like starting to begin. Like the Hays Code doesn't really go into effect until I think 34.
It punches up.
It existed. I
goes
think
into higher gear
in like 30 something like that, but it was
it started existing now. In like 22 or so.
I think 22 is maybe like when they decided to like put together, like start organizing.
Mm-hmm.
But there were other sort of like self-imposed sort of film rules that different studios had.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just think it's interesting that this movie was made right around the time that all these studios are sort of like, what are our rules that we have to like abide by so that people will stop like protesting our movies for being immoral?
Yeah. I mean, especially, in the wake of all of the scandals in Hollywood these days.
Yeah.
And so I guess what you're saying is that it seems like a biblical epic, all about how it's good to be good.
Yeah, and it's good to follow rules.
Yeah. Feels like it is in response to all of that, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Favorite movie of the fest?
A Safety Last. I know I just said this, so there's definitely some recency bias. I said this literally in the last episode, but I think Safety Last might be my favorite thing that I've seen for this entire show. I don't know. I loved Safety Last.
Safety Last was really, really good. Let's see. I liked Woman in Paris, A Woman of Paris, a lot more than I thought I would.
Same.
I thought it was quite a good movie. And I don't think that Safety Last is perfect. I think it drags a little bit in the middle. But Safety Last is amazing.
You can't beat Safety Last is so good.
The tension. It's not just funny, it's like tense.
Yeah. And the fact that it's so tense makes it funnier.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Harold Lloyd.
Yeah.
Doing good work.
Good at his job.
Well, that's it for the festival.
Yeah.
This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, I'm glad we did it.
I don't know if we're going to do a video about this or not, or if we're just going to do it for fun, but tomorrow we're going to be going to what's it called, the Palace Theater?
Yeah.
That is incorrect. It is actually the Plaza Theater.
The Palace Theater in Ottawa, Kansas, which is the oldest movie theater that was built to be a movie theater and is still operating.
Yeah.
Which is going to be really cool.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of, I guess they've got a bunch of film history memorabilia in the lobby. We could be watching Ant-Man or Magic Mike, but I think we're not going to.
Yeah.
Seems like a bit of a waste of time. And now that I think about it, they are pretty close to when your flight is.
Yeah. Also, fun fact, Ottawa, Kansas is where my dad went to college.
Now everybody can dox you.
Yeah.
I guess they know your name already.
True. I'm very easy to dox. Please don't dox me.
I feel like now's a good time to sign off.
I think so.
That'll be it. Please follow us on YouTube, Instagram, podcasts, just
all the
Twitter,
things. Yeah.
wherever you can get new stuff. If you're not, aware, we are bi-weekly now.
Right.
Ignore the fact that we're called 1 week, 1 year.
Despite 1 week being in the name, it is a bi-weekly show now.
It really cursed me, and
yeah.
The title of this show has given me so much guilt.
Hey, it made a lot of sense when we started.
Yeah.
So.
It made a lot of sense when we were watching 30-second movies.
That too. Yeah.
But it's a little more sustainable this way. Please tune in every other Wednesday. That'll be about it. Thanks for listening, and Glenn, I won't see you in person. It's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
This was fun. This was good.
Yeah.
But over the internet, I will see you next year.